Welcome to the cast. We're back.
What's up, dude?
Not too much. So first thing to announce, we have listened to your guys' request. We're going to start, well, we had a Patreon, but we're now associating it with the podcast. So if you want us to do podcasts more often, hooray. There is going to be a link in the description. It's still patreon.com/charisma on command. That's what we had initially for our charisma on command. Then we just kind of shut it down. For every $300 that we can raise per month, we will add another podcast. And this one, obviously, sometimes we just do them because we want to. But if we get $300, we'll do one. $600, we'll do two per month. And if we get $50, we'll do them as often as we feel like, which is my prediction. And that's totally fine.
We'll
but
keep
you guys
paying Justin out of pocket.
Yes. So, big things. You want to start with the David Icke stuff?
Sure, fire away.
All right, I'm going to catch the audience up. Do you know about the David Icke thing on YouTube, Justin?
No.
Okay, so this was huge with the sub niche on YouTube. London Real is a guy who has an interview channel. He does variable well with his things, but this guy, David Icke, brings in millions of views. He has him on 3 weeks ago. He does like 3, 4, 5 million views. He has him on for a live cast. And they start getting, I think at the peak, it was like 70 or 80,000 people watching this podcast, which is way more than Joe Rogan. It's like Joe Rogan, Elon Musk numbers. This is one of the biggest conversations that has been had on the internet in a long time. And YouTube shuts it down, deletes the video. That's it.
Can I give a quick primer for people that don't know David Icke?
Well, that's that. Yes, go ahead. This is
so
the next.
People,
so why is
so
the
for people that don't know David Icke, well, this isn't why it was shut down actually, but that's for people who don't know David Icke. He will tell you that there's satanic cult / reptilian alien overlords who, by controlling the most powerful Illuminati in the world,
he doesn't say Illuminati.
Run things in.
I want to use his own words. He doesn't say Illuminati.
Are you sure?
I've never heard him say
I watched
Illuminati.
a video where he said Illuminati.
Okay, so maybe they're
from
the
3 years
Illuminati.
ago. This is the thing. His language changes.
Okay.
3 years ago, he said satanic cult Illuminati.
Okay.
Now he says reptiles. But they are the deep state. They actually are the ones that control the world. And so Barack Obama, both Bushes, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, all of them are part of this satanic cult / are reptiles.
And they're aware of it. So that's one thing. And in addition, this particular thing was about how coronavirus is, in his own words, coronavirus is not real. And what he means by not real is that the sickness that people are getting with the lungs and all that stuff is in fact not caused by any viral thing, but in fact caused by 5G transmissions that these, in his own words, psychopaths are erecting in the name of communications. But really it's a strategic plot set in place for over 30 years to enslave humanity. And you can watch the whole thing and get your own opinion on it. So in summary, that's a brief thing.
That's who David Icke is.
That's who David Icke is. But that's not who David Icke is. David Icke is obviously so much more than these few beliefs. And YouTube shut it down. And then the guy London Real started posting about how this is censorship of freedom of speech. He was removed from LinkedIn yesterday. They just unceremoniously deleted his profile, and it raises, in my mind, a whole bunch of very interesting questions around freedom of speech, the responsibility when you have freedom of speech with what you say, and how this should have been treated. So go ahead.
Where do you want to start? Because I have a lot of thoughts around David Icke himself, or we can go from the freedom of speech angle.
Well, let's address Icke second, because I think there's a broader thing, which is, can you say whatever you want, first in life, and second on a platform like YouTube? Should you be able to? And
all right,
so I'm
so
curious.
you go ahead. You lead that one.
This is such a complicated question. Okay, so YouTube has for a long time and been trying to straddle this ground between private company and public platform. And they want to be a public platform, so when somebody posts a video of beheading somebody, they're not liable, right? This is a platform we don't control. We're not going to be here to censor. They also have an agenda of what they want shared and what they want to cultivate in their community. So they say, no, you can't be mean in this way, no hate speech this way. And
well, they also get pressure from the government.
And they get pressure from the government.
The government is who decides if they're a monopoly or not.
Yes.
So they obviously have extreme incentives to stay on the good side of the government and to be viewed as a platform, which weirdly enough means sometimes acting as a private company.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Because
Yes.
a platform wouldn't censor, but if they don't censor, the government's going to get upset at them. So they have to not act like a platform so the government will not call them a monopoly.
And for instance, if they were a public utility, if YouTube was a public utility, you can say everything that David Icke said on Verizon's phone lines, and it would be completely illegal, out of bounds for them to shut you down. You can say, I'm pretty sure, everything that David Icke said on a street corner, and or in a park, and if it's a public space, they can't drag you out of there, right? So the question is, can YouTube do this?
The answer is yes. Should they? Is it legal? I don't know. Can they?
Yes, they obviously
Clearly
can.
they have.
So my opinion is that YouTube is really trying to play the line between platform and private.
Yeah.
I think they ought to be classified as a public utility and a platform, in which case the permissiveness of what can be said goes through the roof.
Oh, interesting.
I think that YouTube, in my opinion, what do you want? Do you want to be a platform? You want to not be held responsible for all the beheadings and horrible stuff that goes on? Or
so
do you want
to... Then the question which we talked about is, so what can you say on a street corner? Because even if YouTube is a street corner, there's certain things you can't say, right? You can't go on and call for the specific murder of a person, right? Especially not if you're a celebrity or someone of influence with a following. You can't say, I want my followers to murder this person. I'm not going to use an example because I think even facetiously I could get in trouble.
Yeah.
So the reason, there's two reasons being floated that David Icke is being censored. One, the reptiles don't like what he has to say, and he's the single biggest threat to their plan. Or two, people are burning 5G towers, and he's inciting that feeling that creates the desire to arson these multi-million-dollar investments in technology, right?
I'll give you a third reason, which is between the two. 5G is going to make some people a lot of money. They're in the pockets of government, and their towers are being and the government is, for that reason, they're not worried about the investment. They're just saying, no, 5G is going to roll out. Maybe it's not healthy for people, but they're not reptiles. They just don't care about the public health harms of whatever 5G might cause.
I think that's the second option.
Sure.
Which is, I just wanted to let people know that these towers are being arsoned. It's not like he's just saying stuff. He's saying stuff, and then people are...
This was happening before. So 5G's been a thing for a long time. 4G was a thing. So you've seen the tinfoil. That's like the classic thing.
Yeah.
That's to stop the whatever bandwidth of radio waves. And that's been around for a long time. And his contention is that 5G goes up to a certain frequency band that is even more dangerous, that stops the human body from being able to absorb oxygen, which is exactly what you see in these COVID-19 cases. And that is, in fact, what is causing this illness.
For the record, 5G might be really bad for you. I just want to say I'm gonna come across as very skeptical of certain things David Icke says, but I'm on board with 5G could be very bad for you, and they might be just rolling it out because it's profitable. Not opposed to that idea.
Yeah. So those are the two things. Now, obviously, then Brian Rose, who is the interviewer in this case, goes on and says this is an issue of freedom of speech. You should be able to say whatever you want. I disagree with what you say, but will defend to the death your right to say it. But to your point, I think there's something that is never said in the free speech debate, is that no one I have ever heard advocates for unlimited free speech. Never. What they say, I want free speech, but you can't slander me, and you can't slander other people. Like you said, you can't call for the assassination, and you can't say things, as far as I know, that cause imminent public harm. So if
that would be so interesting, actually, if one of these free speech fighters, if some celebrity came up and just aggressively slandered them, like just made up bold-faced lies and was like, oh, okay, and then the question is,
this person is a pedophile. I have proof.
I have proof. This and that, and then the question is, are you, Mr. Advocate of free speech, I defend to your death the right to say it, are you going to sue for slander or libel? Because I would bet that most people would.
Of course. So I actually...
Well, it's not of course, because what they're saying is I will defend to my death free speech, except for some forms of speech which I don't like.
Yes. And I think this is actually the difficult thing, where I don't care how libertarian you are, I don't know anybody who advocates for pure unlimited free speech. Anyone. And if you
for
do,
sure. I mean, when Justin Bieber had 3 billion diehard fans, I don't think anyone wanted him pointing them at people as missiles, you know what I mean? Saying, oh, I really wish that this person would die.
Not even that. Go farther than that. You need to get this guy.
People would show up dead.
Yeah.
People would show up dead if you did allow that level of free speech.
So we always have, and whether we like to say it or not, we take these sections of speech and we codify them as not within the realms of free speech. Slander. You can't say things that are knowingly false about a person or company that harms them. And if you do sue for slander, you have to demonstrate harm. Calling for assassination. So the question then arises, does this kind of speech on a platform like YouTube, how do you balance the potential for harm that it may cause if, in fact, let's just say David Icke is not correct? This is a virus that people are now not going to prepare for by using masks. Maybe they're going to blow up some 5G towers. Maybe, who knows? versus his right to say whatever he wants in whatever venue he wants.
Sorry, that's
How
the other
does
concern.
that get
the other
weighed?
concern is if you don't believe in Corona and what we've been told about COVID-19 is accurate, then what you will do is interact with old people and things like that, and you'll end up accidentally killing your loved ones.
Potentially. And this is, I'm not even going to weigh in if he's wrong.
That's
right?
what I said.
So
if he's
the
wrong.
truth obviously matters tremendously in all of these cases. It's one of the defenses against slander is it's true. You can say horrible things about someone if it's true.
Yeah, if you actually have evidence that someone's a pedophile, you can say so.
Yes. And so what I think has been missed in all this, there's a large YouTube uprising, the hashtag London Real Army, free speech, and I don't see them really grappling with the contention of, let's just pretend in our thought experiment, I know we agree in this group of people with David Icke, let's pretend that he's wrong. What is at stake in terms of harm and lies versus how much do we want to defend his speech? And I'm not saying that YouTube was right to have done it, but I think it's a much more complicated question than people are making it out to be. And within the David Icke thing, there seems to be this anti-establishment. Everyone who has $1 billion is bad. Everyone who is a CEO is bad. Obviously, these companies are operating with a different set of morals than the people in my normal life.
This is what this is the part I wanted to talk about. Do you want to get into this?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So the thing that I think is interesting is I think David Icke has some interesting Buddhist level philosophies that I like about how we are love and we are energy. 2, he says that certain things are happening that are bad, and I agree with them. But his take...
Do you want to give any examples of those?
Yeah, I will. His take at a high level is that the reptilian overlords are pushing it upon society. And there's a sense that there's the small percentage of beings on Earth that are evil who are doing these things to us. And I think there's this thing called the Gordian knot, which is just you just assume the simplest explanation for something. And every single thing he has, and I'll go into the examples, you can just explain without saying that there are reptilian aliens that are invisible to our fifth sense that live on the moon. You can just say people are people, and this is exactly how we would all act in these situations. So there's one, I'll just read all the examples. So one of the things he said is you can tell that we are being... Okay, so now this might have been from earlier. I don't know if he said this was because of the devil or because of the reptiles, because there was a switch of who's the...
So I didn't hear him say reptiles. So I only watched the one interview. He didn't say reptiles. What he said was AI and super psychopaths, including Elon Musk, super psychopath.
No, lizards. He says lizards that are wearing human disguises that our five senses can't see.
Okay.
I went deep. So, but at one point it was Satan, and I don't want to misquote him. So this was either Satan did this or the reptiles did this. But he says we're deluged with sugar. We're breathing poison air. We live in electromagnetic, Wi-Fi, and cellular that are killing us. I agree. Being pushed on us by the evil, whether it's Satan's influence or the reptiles. People would flip out if you took these things away. Because I totally agree with him. But if you said to people, hey, no more sugar, it's killing us. We're going to heavily mitigate how much you can drive because fuel is bad. And we're going to force you to buy electric cars, even though they're more expensive. And we're going to severely cut down on where cellular and where Wi-Fi is available. There would be a literal uprising in the streets. You know what I mean? And so why does the explanation have to be that some evil outsiders are doing this and not that in our own short-term desire for pleasure, we have all agreed to just do things that kill us, which seems very plausible and doesn't require Satan or aliens, something you can't see. It just looks like it's human nature. We're all very excited to eat our sugar and hold our phones to our head, even though we've all heard the rumor that they might cause cancer. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
So that's my biggest thing is you're right. All this bad stuff is happening. And by the way, you're right. Maybe, I don't know enough about it, we should not let 5G be everywhere if we run independent studies that show that it kills people. But the reason there's 5G, in my opinion, is just because human greed occurs. It's just something they can monetize. And I think it's not because anyone's evil. The same people that are upset, if they were in charge of the phone company, would be promoting 5G because it would make them billions of dollars.
I think that's the thing. So we often say human greed, and it's like, it's actually not just simply human greed. It's your greed that you're blind to, just multiplied by every person on the planet. And this is I think the appeal of conspiracy theories and anything that scapegoats the troubles of the world onto a particular group.
That's not you.
That's not you. Whether it's the poor, the reptiles, the wealthy, and the farther you can separate them for yourself, this is what Hitler did. Like the Jews are animals.
I was just going to say that.
Like the more appealing it is, because it hits on a base psychological need to be the good guy. And so for me to be the good guy, I have to take all the reasons that the world is bad and say someone else has done them. What is more likely happening, as you said, is that the selfish decisions that you make in your life at a small scale every single day, when you cut in traffic in order to get off on the exit ramp, when you when I remember when I was a kid, a coin machine spat out more money than the $20 that we put into it, and it was like, hooray! It wasn't like, oh no, let's go to the counter and return this
because we've stolen from this.
It was like, what a like, amazing. And we it was at happy times, and we were so excited to take that money and spend it.
Yeah.
All these minor infractions that don't count that you do are exactly what the CEO of Verizon Wireless is doing, just at a different scale. And what it means is that if you want the world to change, you have to first figure out how to not make these convenient, minor, hidden to yourself infractions. And then when you've cleaned up your own room, as Jordan Peterson would say, then you can begin to help teach other people how to make those hard decisions. And so questions like, I don't want to moralize, but how thoughtful are you about your diet? How thoughtful are you about the litter and the trash that you put into the world, right? These are the questions that we would like these cell companies to ask themselves, but are very unwilling to.
Or when was the last time you told a little, in your mind, harmless lie because it benefited you? Mm-hmm. Because that's what other people are doing that you may or may not like so much. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like this, if 5G, if there's a little bit of research that shows it's damaging, but they're not sure if it's right or not, and like I said, they have billions to make, that is exactly the same as when you lie at happy times. Mm-hmm. Like whenever you have hidden a truth for your own little benefit, they just have more at stake.
Yeah.
Their little lie is a bigger lie, but their happy times is $100 billion.
Yes.
And so they're making the same decisions that everyone else makes.
Mm-hmm. And so, as I was watching, I was going, when I listen to this, it seems, Elon Musk is a super psychopath. Bill Gates is a super psychopath. And this is another question that I brought up, which is, fine, David Icke has been doing this. He calls himself a professional conspiracy theorist for 30 plus years. If you're the interviewer, you're sitting there, Brian Rose, I genuine question, what is your responsibility to check, push back, or is it just your job to allow him to represent himself? I don't know the answer to this, and I'm curious what you think.
Depends on the style. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If it's Oprah, the goal would be to try to get David Icke to explain the moment when he started feeling, you know what I mean? There's no pushback. The thing is just find out what started this. When did you went from sports reporter to this? Was it because you were molested? Was it because you were doing drugs? Was it because you had a meditative epiphany? If you're on Crossfire, then your job is to aggressively grill him. And if you're on Hot Ones, then your goal is just to find out about when he was 12 and played sports.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on
how you've established yourself.
Yeah, who are you?
And the reputation. Got it. I think that's fair.
Tim Ferriss never grills, and he says as much. And he says that anyone he interviews can cut anything they like.
Yeah.
And he would, and I think would completely own, I'm here for people to learn from you. I'm not here as an investigative journalist to bust you on anything. And so people love going on that show because they know it's going to make them look great.
Yeah.
London Real's responsibility is just whatever he's set up for himself as the interviewer.
To be consistent with himself as an interviewer across various interviews. I think that's a fair position.
Unless he feels an extreme moral obligation, which clearly in this case he doesn't.
And so, then this is the question. And I think there was one moment where I generally agree with you, but David Icke throughout this interview says, if 5G gets up, it will be the end of humanity as you know it. What are you going to tell your kids and your grandkids happened when the fascist state came in and took over everything? Are you going to say you sat on your butt? And he says, now I'm not advocating violence. I would never, but what you do is up to you. Yeah. And I go, David, I think it's incumbent upon you to be violent. Because if what you're saying is that you think that humanity is going to be enslaved and you're unwilling to get your hands dirty, I think you lack ethical backbone, right? Like you're just your job is to sit here and talk while the global fascist state is coming in. If you believe what you're saying, that billions of people will be enslaved and die, but you stop at violence because of your own moral I find suspicious.
Yeah.
But you're willing to get here and then wave your hands and say, hey, I could say whatever I want. Whatever people do is up to them. But I've just made the most persuasive argument I could do that the world as you know it is coming to an end. I see serious issues with that. And I know that if I were in opposite the interview seat and I had my wits about me and I was, things can happen in the heat of the moment, but I'd go, hold on. You just told people that if they have a backbone that they have to go do something violent to stop this. Mm-hmm. They have to, at the very least, break quarantine. At the very least, right? That's a big thing. He says, don't listen to power. They have to get out there. They got to shake hands. They got to hug each other and recognize that that's not what is transmitting this COVID-19. It's the 5G radio tower. So as long as we're hugging and coughing on each other, nothing can go wrong if you have conviction in your belief. And I wish that he'd been pushed on that, because he's making falsifiable claims that have lives at stake, and he may be right, but I think rather than him go, oh, you guys do what you want to do, like all I could tell you is that the global fascist state is here and they're going to take over everything, it's a total cop out.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's fascinating if you zoom out a little and just think about it from a human persuasion perspective. He is fascinating because, in my opinion, people show up to David Icke and you can almost predictably know if they're going to find him crazy or persuasive. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he is more filtering you than he is persuading you, if that makes sense. Because he has had some very accurate predictions in the past. Mm-hmm. And he has completely missed on predictions in the past. He's been making claims like 5G is going to end the world. Well, if in 50 years or in 30 years...
5 years. This is an immediately falsifiable claim.
If in 5 years 5G is everywhere and we're not all controlled by reptiles on the moon, then you'd be like, oh, okay, he was wrong. But that will not hurt his following at all. Because in 1991, he said Saddam Hussein was dead. Mm-hmm. And he was wrong. And then in 1993, I think he wrote a book saying that there would be a terrorist attack on the United States between 2000 and 2002. And September 11th happened.
And he tells that. Yeah.
And he tells it, but his followers are like, he's been right on everything for 30 years. That's a literal quote that people that like him will say. Mm-hmm. That's just not true. And so... we were talking off the camera. You're like, yeah, I mean, what's he going to do once this is wrong? He's just going to come up with something else, because he's filtering. He's filtering for if you're dissatisfied with society, if you feel lied to, if you don't like your parents or your teachers or your bosses or whatever it is. And he gives you a home and a community that all says like, yeah, these aren't even humans at the highest level. They're satanic cults. They're reptiles. You don't like Barack Obama. Yeah, you can be as mean as you want to Barack Obama. That's not a human being. Mm-hmm. And so that's literally what he says. And it feels great if you hate Barack Obama and you hate your boss and you hate authority and you feel like you've been lied to.
If you hate your dad.
Yeah, exactly. No, and so I think that's really what he does. Yeah. Is he more than anything else, he filters. Because when some people watch it, I brought him up and some people go completely... They're like, that guy? Why are you even talking about that guy? Like, he's clearly not. Well,
very few people engage with his ideas on let's see, in an actual like checking.
That's what I'm saying. You're either in and you believe it.
You either go, oh, he thinks reptiles, which okay, that sounds crazy, but fine, let's explore. Right? He's got a huge audience. Maybe he's onto something.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Very few people go, okay, let me weigh this as if it could be true and could be false. Mm-hmm. And instead, what you get a lot of times is that guy's a nut job. I'm going to write him off, or oh my God, I knew it.
I knew it.
I knew it all along. You know what I'm saying? Like they were just waiting for the words to explain the feeling they had.
Yes.
That's my biggest thing. I can go into a million.
I don't want to wait too much on.
I went deep because I thought I was going to do a breakdown.
Yeah.
I have I don't know if you can. I have literally just like so much examples of word for word stuff he says, but we can move on.
Yeah. So it does raise the most fascinating question of all to me is around. It made me recognize that I thought, because I've heard people say that, I think it's Voltaire quote, which is, I disagree with what you say, but defend to the death your right to say it. And I recognize that has been a lie to almost everyone who has ever said it, because they don't get up there and die to get the slander laws removed. They don't do it, right? Yeah. They think that free speech needs to be curtailed. And so it's not such a simple question of, oh my God, that's you're infringing on free speech. It's, I hate to say this, we weigh it all the time, and we have a very difficult, horrible, no-win job of weighing this. And I think you have to err on the side of letting ideas be said, because otherwise people in power can go, no, that's some crazy talk. Mm-hmm. But you still have to weigh it, and it's It's a crazy position that I find myself in, but I think that if anybody's being fair, they feel similar. They feel the same. Unless you're out there protesting and dying to stop slander laws, you feel the same. Or at least you don't feel like Voltaire did.
Yeah. Unless you're very comfortable with a major celebrity saying that you're a pedophile and that he has evidence, despite the fact that he doesn't and you're not, you are not really.
And you can fight him with your speech.
Exactly. Yeah, and you can't sue.
Yeah.
As long as you're not okay with a major celebrity saying that about you, then you're not for 100% free speech.
So the last thing on this, because it did touch, I realize, and it's the appeal to science, we've mentioned this, is almost always an appeal to authority. So David Icke on a handful of occasions talks about a study out of this or a study out of that, and he cites names and I am positive that there are people on the other side that have names, studies, and scientists that will say the opposite. And I'm not.
I'd actually go so far as to say that he saw those studies, but doesn't believe them.
Yes.
And that his opposition has seen his studies, but thinks that they're crackpots.
Or wouldn't even want to.
But my point is, like, they're not even. It's not that they're unaware of the studies that discredit them. It's that they have looked at it all and then chosen to talk about the ones that support them.
Yeah. And so often, science, which is supposed to be based on a hypothesized investigation and an attempt to prove yourself wrong, becomes appealed to in an argument, and it's purely an appeal to authority to go, well, you have no idea about the study, you know nothing about the sampling of it, and this is a trump card for me to go, well, actually 5G kills people, or actually 5G has never been proven to kill people. And I just noticed that a handful of times, that it's the only way that I can even engage in these sorts of discussions and arguments is to go, I can't even fight over contentious studies and issues. I just have to address the overall consistency of your argument. And if you're saying that the reptiles are on the moon, like, let's discuss about things that you might believe that could disprove that, because I can't argue with you back and forth. My study says, your study says. It's just a fruitless go around. But I got a handful of other things if you want to.
Go for it.
Big switch.